Good evening, everyone. There we go. All right, thank you all. I want to thank you all for coming out this evening. Your participation tonight is key to attaining the best ideas for diverting waste from landfills and increasing united recycling efforts as part of Fayetteville's first citywide solid waste reduction, diversion, and recycling master plan. Tonight, you all are making history. Since recycling programs first started in our city over 20 years ago, to the adoption of our pay-as-you-throw program in 2003. I remember those days well. I was on the city council at that time. In our very exciting Recycling Something campaign, which was launched in 2013, and as a mayor, I was very proud to launch that program. Fayetteville has always strived to be on the cutting edge of waste diversion. In addition, Fayetteville has long been known as leading the state in environmental protection initiatives and actions to benefit the environment. This leadership places our city in the perfect position to unite to find a plan of success for Fayetteville to lessen our dependence on landfills and the taxpayer fees that goes with landfill dumping, while increasing the amount of material recycled and composted in our city. Tonight, I am very excited at the opportunity for our community to provide input on how we can divert more waste, improve recycling participation, and create a more sustainable future for ourselves and for our children. Tonight, you will hear from waste diversion experts from Kessler Consulting, who will summarize the city's current waste reduction programs, present results from a recently completed waste composition study, summarize opportunities that exist for increasing waste diversion, and solicit your input on current and potential future waste diversion programs and policies. I want to thank you all for being here and participating in this historic evening for our city. And now I'd like to introduce Jeff Coles, Recycling Trash and Director for the City of Fayetteville. Jeff, thank you all.
Thank you, Mayor. Again, my name is Jeff Coles. I'm a Director of Recycling Trash Collection with the City of Fayetteville. And though I would say, my sophomore year, and I've been with the city now 15 years, but in this capacity, in my sophomore year. So this has been an exciting process as I've begun in this capacity as director, and then moving into this process and engaging with our consultants. And I can't speak highly enough of Kessler Consulting. They have been absolutely wonderful to work with, very professional. Their entire staff from the beginning been absolutely fabulous to work with. They've got incredibly talented people, agile minds, which I appreciate, so particularly because sometimes the windmills of my mind, a little bit rusty, a little creaky, but I appreciate their expertise in this field. They're highly regarded as what they do, and we're looking forward to the path for, as the mayor indicated, what is essentially the key, and that's the future. And it is a simple concept of good stewardship, but closing that gap from that 20% recovery or diversion that we now see to that lofty goal that has been set and resolved by the council. It's going to take a lot of work and a lot of imagination and agile minds to do so, and we're looking forward to the plan that they bring forward. Tonight, I think they're going to convey to us and through a presentation show us in summary form where we are to this point. I think we're about midpoint, are we not? Somewhere in that 12-month process. So moving forward from this, but as the mayor said, we're looking forward to some input from you. I would just ask if you would reserve comment until after the presentation, and then we'll open things up after that. So again, please make welcome Mitch Kessler and Robin Mitchell with Kessler Consulting.
Is this good? Yes? Yes. Well, thank you for being here tonight. We really appreciate you coming out. How many of you are basketball fans? Any basketball fans? So we're going to try, and the doors are locked in the front, and there's no getting out till about 11 o'clock tonight. So if they didn't tell you that on your way in, only kid. We really appreciate you coming out. We know there's a game tonight, and I was assured by the city, if Arkansas was in the championship game tonight, this would not be happening, number one. Number two, I will say congratulations, because your team had a great year. And many years ago, for those who've been around when your Razorbacks won the championship, I was in a basketball pool, didn't know much about Arkansas, and I won $1,100 because you guys won that year. And these are the guys who are on the interview team, though. I brought the T-shirt to the interview that I won with my $1,100 and presented. I showed these guys there who said now it would be a collector's item. But anyway, we're really happy to be here. I'm Mitch Kessler. Robin Mitchell's here. We're going to introduce ourselves, let you know a little bit about us, and then what we want to know is why you were kind enough to come out and hear us talk about garbage tonight. And the city's been great, and they really want your input. And they want to understand what's important to you, and us getting that feedback is critical to the success of the plan. So I'm Mitch Kessler, and I've been working in solid waste for over 30 years now, and I always wanted to be in the garbage recycling business as a little kid. And I got to live my dream and do that. So to me, it's a passion. To Robin, it's a passion. And we're excited to work with communities to actually help them implement the program they want. And as the mayor mentioned and Jeff mentioned, it's really fantastic that you guys want to take your program to the level that you're talking about, which is a major accomplishment. As when we had the interview, the folks from the city said to us that, well, you have to consider this is the San Francisco of this part of the country. That Fayetteville is fundamentally different. So we're excited to be here. So with that being said, we work for a lot of communities around the country, particularly in the Southeast. We do work in Colorado, we do work in Canada, we do work overseas, and it's all about solid waste planning, waste reduction, recycling, how to make programs effective and efficient. So that's what we're here to talk about. Well, this is great. I mean, it's not often that we get an opportunity to have this many people in the room who all have such an interest in what the community is doing. Sometimes you have meetings like this, 6 people come. Usually when we have meetings like this and there's 200 people, it's because there's a problem at a landfill that's going to be closed or a waste energy plant or something. So what I heard is a pretty strong interest on the recycling side, so that's super. We also feel comfortable that we're a pretty green company. Our recycling rate certified by the state of my business is 85%. So we only dispose of 15% of the waste that we generate, and we're a carbon neutral company. So I feel right at home with this. A few things that were mentioned I want to comment on before I turn over to Robin. Somebody mentioned over this way, Boulder, Colorado. Well, the county of Boulder and the city of Boulder are both clients of ours, and we worked on their zero waste plan. Actually, Robin was our project manager on that, so we're familiar with that. Somebody else mentioned aseptic packaging. I think you called it right. Well, those boxes are recyclable, and hopefully we'll be getting to that pretty soon. And multifamily. A few people mentioned multifamily. We had a good meeting. This gentleman's actually come back for his second round in one day with us. So we had a good meeting this afternoon on multifamily, and I do think you have some issues that Brian is really busting his butt to try and turn around and make some progress with. So I think we'll have a lot of discussion on that. And lastly, to my Canadian friends, I spent 4 years working for a Canadian consulting firm. So glad you're here, and you could bring a lot of experience to the table, because Canada, for those who don't know, particularly Toronto, was years ahead in curbside recycling of where we were in the States. So we're glad you're all here. I'm going to turn over to Robin Mitchell, who's the project manager on this. She's going to start on some of the presentation, then I'm going to pick it up, and then we hope to have discussion on as many topics as you want. I don't think we had to lock the doors. I think you all want to be here, so that's super. So I'm going to let Robin introduce herself.
Thank you. So I'm Robin Mitchell with Kessler Consulting, obviously. I've been in this industry for about 26 years, and I've been with Kessler for 15 of those. And as Mitch said, you know, we're really, this is really important to us. We're in this mainly to try to further waste diversion, try to encourage recycling, source reduction. And we're very excited to be here. I'm very heartened by the number of people here tonight. It's very exciting, and sounds like there's a lot of interested and committed people here. What I want to do is go through a very short presentation show you some of the information that we've already gathered. For those of you that live here, a lot of this won't be new, but it'll be sort of a refresher of where we see things where they're at right now, and then we're going to talk a little bit about the future and what some of the options are. So the purpose of what we're doing is to develop a plan that will help put the city on a pathway towards their 80% diversion goal. At the same time, we want it to be an efficient and cost-effective system. Our main goal tonight is really to get your input on what you as residents are looking for in that plan. And I'll talk more about this, but we estimate that the city's at about 20% recycling now. That's based on what the materials that the city handles. There's some other private sector recycling going on that hasn't really been quantified, but as far as what the city handles, it's at about 20%. So as you can see, that leap to 80% is a very big change. We started out by doing a baseline analysis of the current system, assessing operations. We spent about a week out here sorting garbage, looking at what was in both the residential and commercial waste stream. We feel that you have to measure it before you can manage it. You have to understand what's in your waste stream before you can figure out how to divert it, recycle it, whatever you want to do with it. We're here getting your input. We're actually here for 2.5 days. We're meeting with various stakeholder groups. I would say this is probably one of the most important meetings because you as citizens, we definitely want to get your input. We're then going to look at a variety of options and do an analysis and figure out what's the best solution for the city of Fayetteville, and we'll be incorporating that into the final master plan. A little bit of background of your current system, so this shouldn't be new. A lot of you live in multifamily, which is very exciting that you're here tonight because we definitely need your input. But for those of you that have curbside service, as you probably, I'm sure you know, the city has a pay-as-you-throw program. That's a pretty progressive program, and if you didn't have one, it would be a program we would recommend. You have an option of 3 different size carts, and you pay according to the size of the cart that you utilize. You have curbside recycling, which is great. I'll be honest with you, the system that you're using is a somewhat antiquated system. You do curb sort. It's very time consuming, as I'm sure Jeff and his crews will tell you. They're shaking their heads back there. Very time consuming. You do get a very clean material at the end, but we're going to look at some options for that as well. And then you also have curbside collection of yard waste. Again, progressive in that people are not allowed to put it in plastic bags. The city does its own composting, so they require compostable bags, or you put it loose in a trash can or yard waste can that's then serviced. So those are some really good aspects of the program. You do also have multifamily recycling. I just learned today that top container is affectionately called the battleship. Takes up a fair amount of space in the parking lots. I think there's 6 complexes now that are serviced by this compartmentalized roll-off is what the technical name is. Again, residents are asked to come out and sort their materials by type into various slots within the container. So it is time consuming for the resident. Commercial recycling, the city has several different programs. They do have a program where they collect cardboard and paper. For smaller businesses, just like curbside residents, they provide them with an 18-gallon recycling bin, and they can put recyclables in there, and they're collected on the curbside routes. And then they also have the pilot program, which maybe it's not even a pilot now, it's an official part of the program, which is the purple dumpsters in the downtown area along Dixon Street for glass. And I believe you said you have about 50 businesses participating in that program now. So again, there's some really good things going on, but we're looking to improve them. The city operates its own material recoveries facility, which we call MRF, as well as a transfer station. So at the MRF, the materials are tipped, they're baled, and the city markets them, and they're getting some pretty good prices for those, some pretty good revenue because it's very clean material. The garbage is transferred to EcoVista landfill up in Tawnytown, which is where I think pretty much all the waste in this area is going. And then, as I mentioned, the city operates a yard waste composting facility as well. I'm going to mention, well, let me just say, so the city has a very good program, a very effective program in place, and a very well-run program in place. I do want to mention the university. The city does not manage any of the waste or recyclables generated at the university. They have all of their own contracts, but we view them as a potential partner, and we did meet with them early today to talk about potential partnership opportunities. Both the city and the university have some very similar goals. They're looking for zero waste by 2021. The city is looking for 80% diversion by 2025. They're both at similar places in where their programs are right now. The university reports having about an 18% diversion rate. So we think that there's opportunities for partnership, especially if you're talking about developing facilities. It's just far more cost effective. The more materials you're able to feed into a facility, it's far more cost effective. So we'll be continuing to explore that partnership opportunity. So let's talk about some numbers. We looked at the quantity of waste generated within the city over the last 10 years. And as you can see, it's been fairly consistent. The red part is what's disposed of or landfilled. The blue is what is recycled, and the green on the very top is what is composted. So here's the 2014 figures. But as you can see, it's been pretty consistent, right around 50,000 tons landfilled, right around 6,000 tons, 5,000 to 6,000 tons recycled, and this year there was 7,000 tons composted, about a 20% diversion rate. As part of the project, we did project population growth for the next 10 years. And at the same, we also projected waste generation. Maybe I should explain this a little bit. So the red line is the quantity of waste generated. And it's sort of interesting, you can see where there was the dip in around the 2008 through 11 time frame, where we were in more of a recessionary economy. Waste generation across the country went down. You know, when you have less to spend, you have less things that you're going to buy, less waste is generated. And that's also reflected in the top black line, which is tons of waste generated per capita. We took that, but the population keeps growing, as you can see. So we projected population growth. We took the average, I guess I could be using this. Well, it's not really showing up. Anyway, so we took the average tons per capita generation over the last 10 years and used that to project waste generation growth for the next 10 years. So by the year 2025, we estimate about 83,000 tons of waste will be generated. So it's about 20,000 more than where you're currently at. So again, red line is what's disposed of over the last 10 years, and the dotted line at the top is the projection over the coming 10 years at status quo, meaning about 20% waste diversion. The blue line at the bottom is what's being diverted through recycling and composting, and again, what's projected for the next 10 years, status quo. So you actually really just want to completely crisscross those lines to meet the goals of the city. I mean, so that's huge. It's completely flip-flopping your system, and instead of disposing or landfilling 80% of the waste, you're going to recycle it or compost it, and you're only going to landfill 20%. So that is a huge undertaking, and you'll probably hear us say the word status quo versus change tonight, because that's really what we're looking at, because a substantial amount of change will be needed if you really want to meet that 80% diversion rate. So these are the results of the waste composition study, and we have a lot more detail. We broke it out by residential and commercial. You'll see some of those figures later. But this is the total composition of the waste that's managed by the city. So at the top, the green, the solid green and the solid blue are what's currently composted and recycled, about 20% of the waste. The sort of checkered pieces of the pie are residential waste, and the stripes are commercial waste. Now the blue is recyclable paper and containers. So basically, if you look at the two pieces of blue pie there, residential, commercial, and add them together, that's about 19% of the waste stream. That's 19% of the waste that's currently generated that could potentially be recycled through the city's existing programs if it was collected. So that's a substantial amount that is out there and could already be diverted if people were participating to a greater extent. The two orange pieces of pie below that are your soy cartons. It's other recyclable materials that are not currently included in the city's program, but are recycled in many other communities. So it's what we call aseptic packaging, the soy cartons, your milk cartons. It's different kinds of plastics. It's, if you're all familiar with the little numbering on the bottom of your bottles, it's the 3 through 7s. It's not just the 1s and 2s. It's also other types of plastics. It's your yogurt container or your margarine tub. It's also electronics. Somebody mentioned electronics. So it's other materials that could potentially be recycled but aren't really a part of the city's existing program. So that's another 9%. And then if you look up on the other side and the green pieces of pie, the checkered and the stripes, that's compostable material, both residential and commercial. That's another 19%. Now that's primarily food waste and what we call low-grade paper. So it's paper that's too contaminated to recycle. Some of your fast food wrapping, napkins, tissues, things like that. So you're not going to recycle those, but in some composting systems they could be composted. So that's a fairly large portion to another 19%. And then below that, you'll see another piece of pie that says drop box materials. The city has a drop box program where they periodically provide roll-off containers or dumpsters for bulky waste or for construction and demolition debris. We did do a visual audit of that, and much of that material could also be recycled. So to me, the important thing of this, if you look at all those pieces of the pie, starting with other commercial recyclables and go counterclockwise all the way around through the drop box materials, if you get every single bit of that, then you'll get to 80% diversion. Because these two little brown, the checker and the stripe at the bottom, that's about 20 to 21% of your waste that's generated. So that's the part that would be disposed. So you really would have to get all of the rest of it to get to 80%. So let's talk about getting to 80%, and I'm going to turn it back over to Mitch.
Is this working? Is this good? You okay? Yes. Okay. I think he's on it. There you go. So that's, are you going to be the clicker? I'm going to be the clicker. Which one of these buttons am I pushing? Oh. Okay. I'm going to go backwards for a minute, I think, because that's really, Robin did a great job of explaining that, but that is Fayetteville's material. It's what's disposed of and what's recovered. So if we could really get the community to understand and appreciate this simple pie and do something about it, we're on our way to success. So that's why we think waste composition is so important to get started with something. So I'm going to go kind of quick because we really want to hear from you. But the 80% target we're talking about, as Robin's mentioned, is an extremely ambitious target. And I would tell you that if you look around the country, there are very few places, if any, and those that are claiming it, it would be debated by some folks in the industry how they're counting, that have hit a number as high as this. So you're at 20%. So this has to happen in the vast majority of cases incrementally. because it's not going to happen overnight for the reasons Robin talked about. So I would say to make this work, and in this state I guess it's safe to say, it's really going to take a village, but it's going to take a village supersized. This is not something that can be done alone, and it is going to require partnerships. So what we're getting at with all generators and all materials is really just that pie chart. It's all the materials. It's not some of the materials, or you can't get there. And it's all the generators, multifamily, single family, businesses, small and large, the university working together. And then it's going to require the mayor is still here, and it's going to take the mayor and the other leadership to actually say, well, do we need to change some of the policies that we have? Do we need to ban certain materials from disposal? We're not yet promoting one thing over the other, but some of those communities around the country have banned certain things from disposal, be it commercial food waste, be it cardboard. So that material can't actually be put in the trash. If it is, the trash is left behind at the curb. First, there's usually a notice. We don't take crazy radical steps. And then mandates. Do you mandate that people partake? You're this strong interested community, but not everybody wants to recycle. Some people need guidance. Some people need support. So that's where mandates fit in. And again, we're not suggesting mandates. Mandates is kind of that bad word that some people don't like. But if you want to get to 80%, we're going to have to figure out some things to do, and those are some of the policy issues that the city will be grappling with. And then that's going to develop into a program. And what that program looks like is to be defined. And facilities and technologies, those are what's going to be able to process, accept, and process the materials that we're going to recover. I want to emphasize something Robin said here about the partnership part of this. It's not only going to be a partnership with the businesses, the multifamily, the residents. It's going to be a partnership with the university, hopefully, and as importantly with the private sector, because there are private sector people who could run and process the materials that we're talking about. So we're hoping to engage some of those folks in that. So this is just getting at some of the options that we're looking at. This is the very early stages of this report and plan. So diversion options under residential, and you can see the breakout of the pie chart there of what's in the residential stream separate from the summary table that Robin showed you. Well, single stream. I think most people in this room probably know what single stream recycling is, but just so we're clear about it, as Robin mentioned, you have a segregated program. The next step is commingling, which is usually mixing all the paper, all the cans, bottles in a cart. The next step in that, and it's just, I'm not saying step is in a hierarchy, but the next step is single stream, where all the materials are put in one wheeled cart. And that'll be all the paper, all the plastics, the glass, the metal, all together. The issue and the question is, who's separating it? Is it happening at the curb? Is it happening in a transfer station? Is it happening in a materials recovery facility? So that's the issue, and I know in this community that's kind of a loaded question, because we've had some feedback that some people think single stream is going to ruin the recyclables and it's changing the environmental ethic of the community. We don't sell equipment. We help design programs. So could single stream work here? We think it's going to be essential for some generators to have single stream recycling if you want them to participate. Every business in the community is not, I repeat, every business in the community is not going to separate materials into 5 categories. Some businesses will, but if you want to get to a number like 80%, it's going to take some change. But we're on the residential, so what could you do? Some of the options we'll look at: mandatory residential recycling, curbside organics, expanding that, backyard composting, keeping that material out of the landfill. Reward and incentive programs are very popular in some places. What do you do to incentivize people to partake? We could debate, and we will point out the pros and cons of all of these in our report. We'd be happy to talk about them tonight, but we're just putting the issues out there. And education and the importance of that. So that's on the residential side. Multifamily and commercial, I mentioned before that Brian is really reaching out and trying to work with the multifamily. We've had feedback here tonight. We had feedback earlier that there's a lot of units that aren't yet served and want to be served. It's complicated to serve multifamily. So again, single stream could be part of that. Should recycling become part of the basic service? In other words, every multifamily unit in this city has to have recycling. Well, the issue with that is talk to somebody who runs the facility and ask them to give up a parking spot in many cases, and you have a minor revolution on your hand. Never mind the estimated 10, I think, that you said the large piece takes on. So all challenges that we're going to overcome as we go forward with the program. Developing new ordinances, again, organics collection, technical assistance, helping, and Brian and his folks are doing that, helping these multifamily facilities design and implement their program. And I think we actually had a minor conversion today, this afternoon, with one of the larger holding companies where they're at least willing to pilot that. So that's good news. And you mentioned before you live at a facility that recently converted, and I assume it's working for you. And maybe you'll tell us about that in a bit. Recognition programs, and again, this fits into the commercial multifamily side. There are many programs around the country that with the commercial businesses, you get a green sticker, whatever it is on your door that said, we partake and we're progressive because we're doing the whole farm-to-table recycling thing. So that's what we're getting with recognition programs. And in this case, you're lucky that your city wants to really lead by example. And it's difficult to ask someone else to do something that you're not doing. And in this case, you have a committed staff who's here tonight who really wants to help make that happen. Well, what else could you do before we start talking a little bit with you? Well, I mentioned landfill bans. That's one thing that happens. And again, not promoting one, just saying, hey, if you really want to get somewhere, you can't dispose of all the material that we currently dispose of. It's a long way from 20 to 80. Products or packaging, there's a lot happening on a national level, looking at materials that should or should not be even in the waste stream, and the whole producer responsibility issue. That's usually not done on a local city level, but in some cases it is. Construction and demolition recycling, very important. That's the material that when you knock down a building or renovate a house we're talking about. Public venue and events, great places to reach out and let people know that the city cares. Public area recycling. And then one that's we think is big is this whole infrastructure, regional and public-private partnerships. The bottom line is you don't really have enough waste here to get the private sector that excited. Somebody's not going to come to Fayetteville and build a $30 million facility to recycle materials. You don't have enough. 50,000 tons doesn't do it. So what could we do in the area? There's actually quite a bit. What could we do to work together? Now, we have one elected official in the room. I don't know if we have more than one elected official, but we know we have the mayor here, and other people serve on committees. The biggest challenge in this society is how to get governments to work together. It's simple as that. It's a challenge. Everybody's worrying about their own backyard. I think here we have an opportunity. We're going to work with the elected officials and work with staff to see if there's some way we could forge partnerships to make it economically viable to divert the material that is your objective. So with that, we'll leave you with this thought. I'm going to go back to this microphone and walk around and try and field your questions. Robin is going to diligently pay attention because she likes to take notes and make sure we have all the information correct. So we appreciate your time for the half hour you've let us go through the presentation, and we really want to now hear from you. And I think people need to use a microphone, or could they use this microphone? On this, there's a microphone there, a microphone here, and a microphone there.
A really, really quick question. In Boulder, does the university co-op with the city?
It's a great question, and we talked about this morning, and the answer is a big N-O. No. So if anybody didn't hear the question, in Boulder, there's the university work with the city, and that's that example of the political part of it. You know, big universities, and many people in the room probably went to one of those, kind of have their own little world. They have usually their own utilities, their own operational people, and they run their program separately. We had a great meeting this morning with the university and a few people fairly high up, and they indicated a real willingness to discuss how they could work together with the city. So that's the good news here. What do we call it that I get wrong all the time? Cap and who? Town and gown. I've heard all about town and gown. So we're going to try and make town and gown a reality on the solid waste side here because we need their tonnage, we want their participation, and there's no sense in duplicating efforts. We don't need 2 compost facilities in Fayetteville. We need 1.
How is the decline in oil prices affecting your business?
Well, our business is doing just fine, except saving money on the gas. But you're asking a great question, which is how's the recycling business doing? And the question which you've asked, which is really right on point, is if oil goes down, the value of recyclables goes down. So the markets are at the lowest point they've been in years, the value of the material. But it's really like saying, well, what's the value of gold? What's the cost of a dozen eggs? What's the value of newspaper right now? These are commodities that trade, and they have cycles. If anybody knows when the low point of oil is going to be, and then when it's going back to $100, they wouldn't be in this room because they'd be in a mansion somewhere. So it's a great question, but there's no doubt the markets now are low. And if you were to ask people in the industry over the last 10 years when they've been up and down, in 2008 they were very low. lower than today. The average price is about $90 a ton for the mix of recyclables in a basket of goods. So it's been $90, and I would say to you that it will be $90 going forward. Not today, though. You know, economics is not my specialty, but you have to look at China and what's happening with the economy there. You have to look at the price of oil. You have to look at the value of a dollar compared to other currencies. You put all those together, they all created a short-term perfect storm for low value of recyclables. The only thing that's about the same is aluminum. It's held pretty steady. But paper's way down. Plastic is way down. So great question. That way you can get on the camera. You look good.
I had a question about since you mentioned building partnerships with the city, perhaps you've considered looking into adopt a block or a street program with the Fayetteville public school system. Perhaps incentivize students in order to get into the Recycling Act. Have volunteer work with litter pickup.
It's a great question. I don't know if anybody from the city staff is up. Brian's going to take that.
Well, yeah, I was going to take this off, but maybe I'll just stand here. We've actually got several programs in place with the school district. Dana's right here. She can probably tell better than I can about what's all going on with the schools. But we do have an adopted street program for litter collection as well. So if anybody's interested in that, they can always come and speak with me, and we'd love to get you signed up. But we do have a lot of things going on with the schools. We have a lot of programs. Liz is involved with that a lot. So we have a lot of things going on that's maybe not on the front radar, but they're still happening.
Hello. I have two things that I want to talk about. One is about food waste, and food waste is important not only because of its impact once it becomes landfill and its emissions of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases, but also because it represents a lot of resources that were not used to their full potential all through the supply chain during their production, transport, and consumer use, or not use. So anyways, I wanted to mention that I've recently developed a activity level cost estimation tool that is going to be piloted with a national retailer, and it's being piloted with bulky produce, and that's because of interviews and them identifying that was a hot spot. But this tool is something that might be of interest to other businesses or to the city because it was built with a lot of flexibility, and so it can be adapted to different scenarios or different products. So I wanted to just put that out there. I developed it with pure love for the environment and just really want it to get out there. I want it to get criticized so that it can be improved. So any feedback is much welcomed. And then another opportunity that I wanted to present to the city as well as waste management or other private businesses. The Sustainability Consortium, we partner with the University of Arkansas, and it's also with the University of Arizona State, and they've gone global, and they work with universities in China and in the Netherlands. And so anyways, they have a pilot project in Phoenix right now that is working with electronics. And so I'm just going to read some points to make it more concise because I can ramble. But so the Sustainability Consortium is conducting a pilot project to understand consumer attitudes and behaviors towards recycling used electronics with an emphasis on understanding what constitutes convenience for the consumer. The pilot program is a two-part effort. First, a broad consumer survey to baseline attitudes towards used electronic recycling, followed by a series of collection events with exit interviews to understand what consumers actually do when given an opportunity to recycle what would be assumed to be convenient. The results from this pilot project will be added to an agent-based model that has been developed based on data collected at a national level regarding consumer behavior around used electronics to determine different aspects of a program and how aspects of a program can change consumer response. And so the outcomes would be used to inform programs in place at the city level on potential points of improvements or providing starting points for new programs. And looking for additional locations is currently at the table, and that is why I think Fayetteville might be a potential candidate for piloting this project. And there are much more details, and it's definitely a multi-stakeholder type of project. And so, again, my name is Erin Colleen, and I work at the Sustainability Consortium as a graduate researcher, and I'm also a student at the University of Arkansas in agricultural economics. So I'd love to talk more if there's interest in either of those projects. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I know Robin's going to want to talk to you at the end to find out a little bit more about your model. And we think food waste and groceries are essential and have done a number of programs with facilities like that to get that material out of the waste stream.
Real quick, because you had mentioned electronics recycling, I was wondering if you'd made any, or if anybody in the city had made contact with Fayetteville Free Geek. They're kind of the, and I see a couple nodding heads, they're kind of the volunteer-based, you bring your old computers, VCRs, everything, and they handle a lot of, through some recycling company around here, they do a lot of their recycling.
Yes, and we do have a relationship with them.
Awesome.
Actually, for just information, people will know what we do with electronics. In our ward cleanups, which our ward cleanups are for bulky waste items, things that don't normally fit into your trash cart on a weekly basis. We have 4 cleanups in the spring, 4 cleanups in the fall. We've completed 2 of the spring cleanups. We have the next one coming up on the 18th of April. Last one, I believe, is May 2nd. Hope I'm right on that. At those cleanups, you can bring electronic items, computers, TVs, monitors, things of that nature. And it goes to ESCO, which is the company that you were referring to in Rogers for recycling. So that is actually a partnership that we have developed with Boston Mountain Solid Waste District, and they have money to help spend for the recycling of the e-waste. So we are now able to take electronics at the bulky waste cleanups. In addition to that, we also have a coupon program for residents because we got a grant from the state of Arkansas. So if you have a TV or a computer or something that you want to get disposed of or recycled, you can either get a coupon from us or go straight down to the Washington County Household Hazardous Waste Facility. And if you're a Fayetteville resident, you just fill out the coupon with your name, address, and that waives that $5 fee for recycling, so you can recycle that for free. So there's options out there in addition to the retail stores. Retail stores are starting to get into take back of electronics as well. So there's options for people for electronics, and we'd be happy to help people with that if they're interested.
Cool. Well, and primarily why I came was as an apartment resident, multifamily, as you say. I had just a couple ideas that, and you guys have probably already thought of these, but of course on-site recycling would be awesome, but you mentioned the logistics problems. It's just if there's anything we as citizens can do to encourage our landlords to, you know, if petitions or bring in the brochures or anything like that, just let us know.
Where do you live? Because Brian's going to have an interest in that.
We're in Lakeside Village, which is also the Greens, and there's Appleby right there. So that I feel is like a big clump of apartments that if you could serve that area, that'd be really great. Anybody who's driven on College lately knows there's a couple of buildings that never get rented. They're always vacant. Sometimes they even have nice big parking lots. Was wondering if it'd be remotely possible to establish those as recycling drop-off centers, sort of like the, I believe, Marion Orton Center, to kind of increase coverage. What else? As far as like what Ozark Natural Foods is doing is great, where they provide in their parking lot. If it'd be possible to incentivize, like say the mall or Walmarts or something like that to provide, you can increase coverage that way. People, they go get their groceries, drop off their recycling. Of course, I had businesses on here, but sounds like you guys are already going after that. So that was it, but I'm just really happy there's so many people here. I thought it was gonna be like me and him and maybe 2 other people. So this is, it makes me proud to live in Fayetteville to be here. So thanks a lot.
Thanks for being here. I don't think Jeff and Brian mentioned, but they were gonna each donate $10,000 of their salary towards whoever is here tonight who wants to work with them. That's the commitment these guys have. It's unbelievable.
Well, I spent many, many years in South Florida, and I was extremely impressed with the state-of-the-art facility that they had there. Now, granted, Palm Beach County has a huge population. They built a facility where they recycled just about everything you can imagine. They generated enough power from their recycling facility and from the pit that they had dug that they were able to run their facility and sell energy back to the county. It was an amazing facility. And that's probably 20 years ago that they put this into effect. Absolutely astounding. So I know what can be done. I know what the future can be. It has always been a source of frustration to me, though, about the tin cans. I do tend to buy vegetables occasionally in the can. I know they're much fresher that way. And I'm wondering if there's some way that you could help me understand why they cannot be recycled. Because I feel like there's a huge potential there that's being, lost. And the as you said, the margarine tubs and the cottage cheese tubs. And I live in an apartment facility where there's one of those great big roll-offs, and I haven't been in Fayetteville very long, but I was absolutely ecstatic whenever I saw that. I said, yes, this is great. And I don't mind going over there, but I see things in the dumpsters around the community, mattresses. We recently had to throw away one of those big old TVs, and we held it. Then it was in our way for a long time because we didn't know what else to do with it. I felt like there had to be something that could be done with it, but we threw it in the dumpster. And it really broke my heart to have to do that because I didn't know what else to do with it.
Well, I think the first thing you should do whenever, just taking your question somewhat in reverse order, whenever you have a problem material that you're not sure what to do with, call these guys. That's what they do. I mean, the staff is here. They'd be happy to have told you where you could take the electronics. Palm Beach County, which has been one of our clients, you're correct. 20 years ago, they were state-of-the-art, and they've fallen asleep on you. So you've now come to a more progressive community because their program hasn't changed in 20 years. So 20 years ago, this was a county that was really pushing the envelope on doing things, and now they're actually a little bit behind the times. So they have a dual-stream program. They built a waste-energy plant recently. It's going to be one of the largest and newest, and they're more interested in burning the material and recovering the energy, which in the fine state I live in actually gives you credit towards recycling. That's another whole complicated piece. But the energy you're talking about was derived from a waste-energy plant that they had that they just redid. My understanding is that's not the most popular topic in Fayetteville. So I'm going to stay away from that one, but that's how they achieved that. 20 years ago, state-of-the-art. Today, middle of the road. So you should be glad where you are.
And I'm pretty sure you can recycle your tin cans. Yeah. Yeah, they are recyclable. They're probably in that drop-off. There's a slot for your tin cans.
It's actually one of the easiest materials to recycle because of the magnetic characteristics of it. It's easy to, so these guys are on it, and unfortunately, you didn't know that, but now you can take every one of your vegetable cans to their facilities and put it right at the curb, and it'll be happily recovered. Well, that's exciting. Those fit into that category of the 3 through 7, depending on what material they are, and that's one of the things that we hope that we're going to be working with the city to find markets for here, so those materials can be recovered, because we're not going to get those numbers up if we don't start going after that part Robin showed you on, where are we, residential, no. Containers, residential paper and containers, 6% of that is being disposed of. Oh.
Yeah, I think I have two questions. First one is for you, Brian. And recently I participated in a couple of cleanups along the trail up on Mud Creek. And one was with the Rotary Club, which I'm a member of, but also with the Illinois River Group. And they were up there. But I'm just curious, is there a way we can separate some of the trash when we're out there collecting? Because there's some recyclables in there. Is there a best practice or a better way of doing that? Because I cringe when I think about all the stuff we pick up. I know most people aren't separating it, but is there a way we can maybe do that?
Yes, obviously there is. You can always put them in one container versus the other, or one bag within the other. But then it comes down to somebody actually taking the time to
Right.
separate it at a drop-off.
Yeah.
Or if they can put it into their curbside, depending on volume.
Right.
That would be something. But we have done cleanups at Lake Fayetteville where we've actually given out the bags for the trash and the litter and given out bags for recycling, and they bring them back together. We'll dump out the recycling and actually separate it and sort it there on site. But it is labor intensive. That's the key to it. You have to separate it in our current system, and I think that's what Mitch and Robin are alluding to here. There's systems across the country that are becoming more prevalent, and they focus on the convenience aspect of it, commingling. And so that's a big question for our community, because we're on that debate line of should we go that route and have contaminated materials, or should we keep doing what we're doing and have good clean materials but limit ourselves to residential basically, because commercial is so hard to get in that kind of a system. So yeah, that separation is the key to anything.
And I just kind of looked for best practices. I didn't know if there was something we weren't doing and we should have been doing, but yeah, you make a good point where we've got to separate that at some point. So, second question is, and thank you, Brian. And second question is for you, Mitch. I'm concerned about education. I have friends who come over to my house. I'm pulling their cans out of my trash can just to recycle stuff. But how do you educate people and to get them over that mindset to do it? And it frustrates me, but I get on to these guys. But best practices, is there anything that you've seen work?
A lot of best practices. Some of it probably starts on this table, but in a year, probably this table is going to look a lot different because we're going to make, hopefully, some program changes to get you there. But education has to be number one, and outreach to the community. And, I mean, I'm not saying this because they're our client. We have 38 other clients but these guys, you have a dozen people here from the city who are committed and care about this. So they want to know where you have issues like that on education, and they want to work with you. I mean, it's simple as that. So best practices, best practices are communicate, then communicate again, and communicate it again. Because if you look at a chart of when we work with the community and you launch off a new recycling program, it goes from here to here, and then it goes flat for a while, and then it slowly goes down. And as soon as you kick off anything, I don't care what you do, send out a postcard, say hello. The mayor's in the parade throwing recycling bins to people. It's going to go back up like this, and then it's going to get flattened out again. So it's key to have education. The best practices are going to be to communicate and clarify so you never have to wonder, is a tin can recyclable in Fayetteville? So that's great feedback for us and staff because somehow that got, missed in your program. So just one thing, and then your question. What I put up here is probably the most important part of the immediate term of the program. In case people have to leave to get the popcorn going for the game, we will stay here until every person has every question or every point made. So we're here, so I don't want you to think it's time to leave in any event, but we didn't put up this last slide, and there's going to be a survey, a very comprehensive survey. In fact, our sustainability coordinator, who's sitting right here, he wasn't going to share this, but actually he's so excited about this, and I believe it's online tonight. So recyclesomething.org. He has a temporary tattoo of recyclesomething.org across his chest. So anytime you forget recyclesomething.org, go see Peter, and he's going to show you and remind you. So you need to pass it on to all your friends. We want people to take the survey. The elected officials, the staff, really wants people to fill this out. There's a piece on there for residents. There's a piece on there for businesses. So your feedback is going to be really welcome. So is that a plug for that? Is it online? I know that was the big question. It's online and active. He's been busting his butt to get it up there and running. So that's a great job.
Thank you for all the great information. Having some background in plastics recycling, you guys have great recommendations for the city. And I'd just like to throw out there that when you look at recycling programs across the U.S., it's not a one-size-fits-all. It really depends on your size, what the public wants. It's a range of different things. And the fact that pay-as-you-throw is already here is a tremendous start. I would say that single-stream recycling, bigger carts for recycling, landfill bans of commonly recycled materials like plastic water bottles are traditionally what's known as the lowest hanging fruit. So those are things that might not be as alluring as having twin the bins in public spaces, but if you're really looking to get the biggest bang for your buck, I think it's in single stream and things that are more curbside or at residential areas. And then I'd also just like to offer up for markets for a range of different plastic materials, plasticmarkets.org, and More Recycling Associates could provide you some insights. And for education, Curbside Value Partnership does some really great work. Thank you.
Well, that's exciting. For a lot of reasons. One, Patty Moore and I were colleagues. She worked for me for many years and is a close friend. So I'm glad you know Moore and Associates. They do a lot of work in plastic recycling. We think plastic recycling is going to be critical to things going forward here. I don't know if you heard. I'm sorry. What is your name? Ashley. Ashley say twin the bins. For those who don't know what that means, is any place there's a garbage container anywhere in the city, there's a recycling container next to it. So people always have a choice. Going to throw it away? Oh, look, there's recycling. So that's a great thing to try and put in place.
I was wondering if you could touch a little more on the economics of a program like this. So there's clearly some revenue streams. I guess you'll get money for some of the recyclable, or I guess all the recyclables, some money, more money for some than others, and you'll be able to sell some of Brian's compost at some point. But clearly to get to 80%, it seems like this is going to require significant subsidies, right? And go for it.
It's a great question. The economics of all this, how does it work? I think our industry, and there's a number of people from industry, there's two things I think we stink at in our industry. One is terminology. We inconsistently use it, and one person's saying something and they don't really have the same definition of another. So that's the lack of maturity of our industry. We're an evolving industry. Recycling has been around for a long time, but modern curbside recycling is new. We have some problems there. The second area we stink at, and these guys back there know it better than anybody, we don't communicate that this is a service business, and all services have a cost. And there's people out in the rain, in the snow, in the heat, picking this stuff up, driving trucks, working in recycling facilities with all kinds of environmental conditions, driving a compactor to landfill. It all has a cost. It's a service business. Nobody comes to your house and picks something up, be it a lawn company, of any company, and doesn't charge. So we have to understand there's a cost involved. The good news you have here in Fayetteville, and I'm going to address your question directly, is that your landfill tip fee is in the mid-40s. All right, about that? Well, that's a high enough tip fee to start to make it attractive. In other words, every ton we divert from disposal, there's an automatic $45 swing. Does that make sense? Because these guys contract to the landfill that was mentioned. Am I in the right number, about $45? Yes, okay. So that swing helps fund the program. But your point, which is a great one, is what is the cost of whatever we're talking about going to be? The answer is we have no earthly idea at this point. Now, I could give you some numbers that could help with that. If you go through, we're not up there. Could you flip I'm going to flip that pie chart back on. Is that the best list we'd have of materials?
Would you expect that tip fee to stay steady, or even, would this tip fee decrease as we approached 80? Because it's supply and demand.
Yes, and let me tell you what some of the variables that impact it are. So let's say we could find, I think there's
plenty of land, I've heard that landfills are cheap, and there's plenty of landfill land. I don't think the land footprint of landfills really isn't a concern in the Midwest. It might be in the Northeast or in California, but here we got plenty of land to bury stuff in. Really.
I live in Florida. We have the same thing. The average tip fee is about $40 a ton. So there's plenty of cheap disposal. But what's going to drive that? Can we find a partner, be it Waste Management, any of the hauling companies there, Diffenbach, whoever's here, to say, hey, let's turn this into a regional facility. The price will go up if Fayetteville stands alone. There's not enough money in 50,000 tons of material to drive a program to get 80%. There's no program anywhere in the country that's a standalone program that's anywhere near that with the population you're talking about. Mm-hmm. So Boulder, a smaller place that somebody mentioned, Boulder's not at 80%. Boulder's not at 60%. Boulder's at 40%. Now, they have laws and policies that want to get them there. Why? For some of the same economic reasons you're talking about. Mm-hmm. So until we identify who the partners are going to be, how much total tons we could get from the region, we're not going to know what the cost is going to be. Our charge is to come up with the most economic way to maximize your recovery. The elected officials will make a decision, well, how much should we invest? What's the partnership look like with the university? What's it look like with Georgia Pacific? What's it look like with waste management? What can we do with some of the regions we're meeting with tomorrow or Wednesday? We're meeting with 3 regional groups. My pitch to them is going to be, let's work together. Because if we bring that tonnage together, we can make it an economically viable program. Alone, we can't. We had some meetings this afternoon where the feedback we got is, good luck getting these communities to work together. That's a challenge. Well, it might be a challenge, but we could overcome that challenge if they all understand that the economics and the success of how to handle waste in the future is based on people working together.
Mm-hmm.
You can't have 4 compost facilities in the region. You don't need 3 MRFs in the region. We don't need to run it that way. So I'm not trying to avoid I just don't have the economic answers.
Yeah.
We can tell you the value of materials. Obviously, on a per ton basis, aluminum is worth the most. And you guys spot market constantly, so you could probably address better today's market here in Fayetteville than I can. But, aluminum's the best, glass is the worst, money-wise. And everything's in between. Plastics, as somebody mentioned before, the value of that is down. It was twice what it is 6 months ago. Nationally, it's local markets impact that. So I don't know if I did you justice on what you're getting at. Is your question as a resident, will my costs go up, stay the same, or go down?
Sure. Well, I think it's obvious the cost for the resident will go up a little bit.
Maybe. Yeah, I mean, that's, it's a consultant answer. It depends.
Yeah.
But
and of course, they're all complicated questions. I just wanted you to touch on the intricacies of that question.
So I'm going to take this
And you did
question
that.
as an opportunity to jump off on something that I was also warned is a bad thing to talk about here. But there's not good or bad to us. It's what's workable and what's best for this community. So some of you may have maybe heard about a facility in Montgomery, Alabama, doing mixed waste processing. 1, 2. Mixed waste processing, let's talk about what that is so we could get into the real guts and dirt of this. It's garbage. It's what's thrown out in garbage. If you get a recycling program, you get 1 bin, you put all your garbage in it. It goes to a state-of-the-art plant. This plant costs $35 million. You should ask the mayor if he has $35 million in the budget. I think we know the answer to that. $35 million of private money went into this facility. The city of Montgomery had a 2% recycling rate. 2. And the mayor was unhappy about that. He wanted a quick change. He was elected on an environmental platform. They built this facility. They're now at 50%. Am I advocating mixed waste processing? No. I'm telling you it's an option in some communities, many on the West Coast where these facilities are, to get the hard-to-go-after materials. So San Jose, as an example, has a very progressive recycling program and captures a lot of material through single-stream recycling. After years of trying to get to their target diversion rate, they weren't getting there. They looked at mixed waste processing and then mandated that all commercial and all multifamily material comes to this mixed waste processing facility, and it's up their recycling rate quite a bit. Is it for every community? Absolutely not. Could it apply here? Yes. I'm bringing that up under this because that would tremendously change the economics in one direction over another. So the going number that people are proposing for a facility like that is somewhere in the low to mid $40 a ton to handle everything. That's private sector money. So could it stay the same and could your recycling rate go up? Absolutely. But it will depend on the analysis that we do and what the city decides is most important. We'll come right back to you. And I'd be happy to,
let me one more second. As I'm thinking more about this, the recycling program could pay for itself, but the composting, the food waste composting, I'd say I wouldn't think it has a chance. Landfilling the food waste is going to be much less expensive, and so are you going to prioritize the recycling program over the food waste program initially?
Well, it's a great point that you're raising, and I appreciate that, and I think you could really help the city in this because the reason, and what's your name?
My name is Eric Bowles.
Eric. The reason Eric's saying that is that market value basket for the recyclables, we could debate the exact number, but it's about $100 a ton. Compost isn't worth $100 a ton in the marketplace to sell it. So the recyclables are inherently worth a lot more than the organics. So the point is if, I don't know what the rate is here in this area for buying compost, let's just say it's $10 a ton for a number. So why would you spend time on the $10 a ton material as opposed to the $100 a ton material? Well, the answer is simple. Oh, that's not up there anymore. The percent of the waste stream that it is, food waste is a high percent, and it is impossible to get to an 80% diversion program without addressing the organics.
Absolutely.
So we like to look at it. It's not breaking down each of these materials into, well, aluminum's worth this and this is worth that. It's what do we do to maximize diversion that fits into the community's program. So no, we will emphasize composting. We will emphasize the recovery of everything that we could recover. But you're dead on right. The material's worth less than recyclables, the organics.
Yeah.
Why don't you have your daughter ask this question? We'd like to hear from you. You shy? I already tried that. We're going to sit down next to you. Do you know what your mom's going to ask?
No, she doesn't know what I'm going to ask.
Why don't you tell her what you're going to ask?
Okay.
I think we're going to pull this off. Because without you, we're wasting our time. I know that doesn't make sense to you yet. How old are you? 12. Anybody in here close to 12? Yeah. So why it's so important and why they want me to ask you this is because you're young, and have you learned about recycling in school? Let them all hear that.
Yeah.
What'd you learn? What'd you learn about recycling? What do you know?
It's just that it's important, and whenever we do it, we're saving the planet.
Saving the planet anytime we do because it's important. That's why you're the most important person here. You've got the longest future ahead of you. These guys are kidding around. There's nobody with even 10 years of you in the room. So you're important to this, so we're glad you're here. I'm going to let your mom ask the question, okay?
Thanks. You were saying that we don't produce enough waste in order to attract a company to come in and build a facility here. So what exactly are your plans to attract other partners to increase the amount of waste, and how much do we actually have to have combined in order to get someone here? And then in the meantime, is the city going to be able to handle the increase in recyclables and things that are coming? And is there a point where it's going to top out if we don't have a facility here that'll prevent us from reaching that 80% in the long run?
That's a great question. I'm going to let them answer the last part of that.
Okay.
But to answer the first part of that, what we're going to do is we're going to meet with any possible service provider who has any solutions on how we could combine into maximize the efficiency of recycling. And you have a lot of people in this area to do that. They're just not working together right now.
Okay.
Both as processors and as well as the generators, the university, the city, et cetera. And then we're working with staff to broaden it out to the region.
So you're talking about other cities and things
Other
like
cities,
that?
they could explain exactly who we're talking to and how they fit. So I'll let Jeff handle that, as well as the question about, are you guys going to be able to handle the short-term increase in recyclables?
Well, from a short-term standpoint, in handling that, what we hope to be an increase in recyclables, going back to that slide as part of that presentation where that status quo element is shown. So we would continue in that vein, and we're also, and Brian has been very aggressively, we have been very aggressively pursuing other areas, other elements of recycling, potentially. But until we depart from what is our standard methodology to this point, yes, I mean, we're not anticipating that we won't be able to handle what we are handling now and what might be some degree of increase. But again,
Do you know how
that is
much
why
of a
we
degree,
are,
though?
I'm sorry?
Do you know how much of a degree? I mean, how much more can you guys handle? You know, are you going to have to increase the workforce or anything like that in order to handle if we were to progress, you know, like at the apartment complexes, adding the additional recycling bins and things like they did at my place? How are you guys going to handle that in the short term and the long term, especially if we don't get a facility to sponsor us? So is that going to prevent us from reaching the 80% goal?
You bring up a very, very good point. Two of the most recently added to programs for our recycling, our apartment program and our glass recycling, were both done mainly with grant monies from ADEQ, State of Arkansas, Boston Mountain Solid Waste District, to give us containers. Apartment program, that big roll-off container, grant money. Indoor recycling bins, grant money. We utilize existing fleet and existing personnel to roll out those programs. So we had no expansion of services. We had no additional FTEs to our division. Everything that we did was within the work we were already accomplishing. So when you look, you know, the question came up today about on multifamily recycling. Why can't we add all the little small fourplexes and 10plexes and all that stuff all over the city? Why can't we just add them onto the curbside program that's currently existing. I think we came up with we would need, out of all those units, we would need an additional 1.5 trucks on top of our current operations to make that happen. That would be an expansion of services.
So are you looking into getting funding for that somehow?
Well, this is what this plan is about.
Okay.
Because we know what our limitations are with our current operations and what we can do. Now we need to look at, should we change the way we process materials and go away from the manual sorting of materials at the curb to a more convenient and, quite frankly, easier to collect system on the collection side. Now you still have to process it, you still have to sort it somewhere, but that happens at a different location. But the collection side of that would actually be improved, because then we have trucks that are standardized, because we have a collection vehicle for waste, residential waste that uses carts. It'd be the same exact truck picking up recycling. It would just be going to a different location.
Okay.
So now we've got our fleet more standardized and the costs more in line with that operation. So these are all considerations that have to be considered. But to answer your question, we are limited. So it is recyclables that are going to be targeted and increased.
Right.
They won't happen unless we get a new program, new equipment and personnel to handle that.
Handle it. Okay. Make those decisions. Okay.
And to answer you raised a great question. To make a recycling facility economically viable at the level we're talking about, you need about 25,000 tons a year.
Okay.
You have about 5 or 6. So that's why we need other communities. And the lady, I'm sorry, I don't remember your name, Annie pointed out that the region, and Robin has all the data on this, is about 500,000. Well, 500,000 will give us plenty of material. And it's a question of these meetings we have in the next few days, getting the regional folks that we're much better off together than separate. The politicians will have to work out their piece of it. And that's, an important part of the world we live in. But I think, the city of Fayetteville, you guys should all be proud, have spoken to a commitment to try and make that work. It's not other cities and regions coming here saying, how do we work together? It's the city of Fayetteville saying, we're serious about this, we're willing to invest in a plan and an effort, and let's work together.
One other question.
Your daughter's in good hands.
Okay.
You're in the right place.
Just a question about the trails, and are those even being thought of as far as the waste and everything? Because we see a lot of that when we go walking, and is there going to be an opportunity for us to clean up? Do you guys have a program for cleaning up the trails, or is that a voluntary thing? Or
well, that's something, and you're talking about on the scope, the Greenway Trail system.
Right.
That has been a question that's been brought up, and how we accomplish that. Now, each city, within its own confines, that greenway and that trail system, ultimately that's supposed to be each city's responsibility. So, we will divide that up. Now, I don't know if specifically at this stage if we've developed. Brian, you may speak.
I'm going to jump in before Brian, because he's probably going to say exactly the same thing.
Yeah, I think we're on the same thing here.
On Earth Day, Wednesday, April 22nd, starting at 12:30 in the afternoon, we're doing a trail cleanup here in Fayetteville, and that's going to be staged out of the Marion Orton Recycling Facility on North Street.
Okay.
So we're asking folks to sign up with our Parks and Recreation Division with that event if they're interested in participating, and to come to that event. And not only are we going to clean up the trails, we're also going to, when we're done cleaning up trash, we're going to spread wildflower seeds along the trails and try and beautify the trails as well. So, they're here, so hopefully he's writing that down right now.
The other thing that I wanted to point out on the public space recycling is we have started that initiative as well. On the square, we have containers in various parks, which we started with the parks that had the ball fields, because they have a large amount of bottles and cans during the summer. So by this summer, all the ball fields and the square will have on-site recycling containers. That's another example of how we're trying to work along, get grant money to buy these containers, set them out, and that is actually being picked up by our Parks Department, brought into our recycling facility, and then our drivers are dumping that stuff out, sorting it just like they would at the curb. So as that volume goes and gets larger, because we've got more parks and we've got more public space recycling, we're going to have to address how to handle that material, because right now we can do it pretty easily, but as the volumes increase, we'll need some level of sorting to occur.
We know that that's going to be an ongoing issue with the trail side, and we've heard a lot about that. So how we make that determination and divide and conquer within the city of Fayetteville to maintenance and collect litter trail side will be a question that we have to something that we'll be dealing with, and that as an ongoing measure.
Just a suggestion, same thing you do with the highway cleanup, where people, volunteer to, clean up a part of the highway. Could they not do the same thing with the trail?
Yes. There's Adopt a Trail programs, Adopt a Street.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention that. But yes, the Parks Department has Adopt a Park and Adopt a Trail. We have Adopt a Street. We're doing a revamp of our city's website right now, and if you go, when this is launched, when you go to the site and you look under Keep Fayetteville Beautiful, you will have options for Adopt a Street, Adopt a Park, Adopt a Trail. Anybody can get involved into those systems. They're already in place, and we want people to be involved in them.
Thank you.
I'm not sure who was first. I don't think it matters too much, but.
Okay. My son and I moved to Fayetteville in 2009, in winter of 2009. We moved straight onto North Street. And I woke up probably one of the first mornings that my trash and recycling was being picked up to this horrible truck sound and clashing of broken glass, and then cans, glass one at a time. And I was like, I don't know if there's someone, I live right on North Street, so there's a possibility that someone's throwing glass bottles at the house right now. Like, I didn't know what was going on. And so I went outside and I looked, and this poor man, it's pouring down rain, it's sleeting, and this man is out there going one by one by one. And I was like, the city of Fayetteville has lost their minds. This is the most inefficient way to do this. I just moved here from Asheville, and we had a truck very similar to what they have now. One side, from what I can tell, I never did it, one side looked like paper cardboard, the other side looked like glass and cans. And we had two separate bins. We had a green one and a blue one. The blue bin was for paper products. The green bin was for everything else. And so they went up, he picked up the blue bin, he went on one side of the truck, he dumped everything in. Went to the other side, picked up the green bin, dumped everything in, boom, he was gone. And this has been something that I've been talking about to friends, neighbors, relatives, anyone that'll listen to me for years. And so when I saw this pop up on my Facebook feed this morning, I was like, oh, someone that will listen, Like, this plan is crazy. So the curbside sorting, I'm so glad that that's already being addressed. I think it's just, I can't even imagine what these guys have to go through. Some of the weather, I can't even imagine. And plus, you're throwing glass everywhere. I can't even imagine. Secondly, in Asheville and in my hometown, all the Walmarts have those, what do they call them, a battleship? All the Walmarts have them in there, like all of them. And I don't know, as a corporation, if that's something you have to get addressed at a local level, city, municipality, I don't know, but it seems like if they're willing to do it at the Walmarts in North Carolina, they'd be more than willing to do it at the Walmarts here. And they, classically have huge parking lots, so you could probably put 2 or 3 in there. Also, I don't know every now and then we'll get a mailing from the city about trash pickup, a special thing that's going on for electronics or whatever. And a few months back, we got this magnet, which I was totally excited about when I saw it, because I hadn't read it yet, but I thought it was a list of what exactly was recyclable. And I immediately was like, look at my 11-year-old son and say, hey, look at this. And then I started reading it. I was like, oh, that's saying other things. I forget what it was. It was some informative thing, but it wasn't what can be put into those bins. And I think if there was a magnet or something that was given out every time, like this, yes, this, no. It is on paper, but there's something about a magnet that it, like, literally, it sticks around. And then also, I remember last year, or maybe 2 years ago, there was a program where the city was offering either free compost bins, or we'll teach you how to build a compost bin, or something, and I let it slip by. Life moves a million miles a minute, but I let it slip by. But I don't know if there was something like that going on again this year, like bring your own materials, we'll teach you how to do it. I think it was a rotating compost bin. I'm not sure. If anybody remembers what I'm talking about.
Well, you raised so many good points
Sorry.
that I don't know if I could remember them all. I'm going to address one, and then you can remind me of what I've missed. The guys back there who are out on the trucks, yeah, they bust their ass. I mean, that's just the facts. They probably do somewhere, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but somewhere 350 households they could pass by in a truck a day. If you do, so that's because they're sorting at the curb. What you were describing is what we would call a dual stream program, fibers and containers. Those folks are probably doing 500 to 700 households a day because they're not in front of your house for a longer period of time. A single stream program could do from 1,000 to 1,200 with automated equipment in a day. So they could go 3 times faster than these guys could go because they're getting out of the truck, they're going up to those bins, and they're sorting them at the curb. Now, the issue that we talked about earlier, that's happening. It's just a question of where it's happening. Is it happening by the resident? Is it happening at the curb? Is it happening in a facility? So, yes, I think they appreciate you acknowledging how hard they work.
Oh, yeah.
And one of the things the city's looking at is what we could do to make that more efficient, to get more tonnage better. The magnet, I thought you had a lot of stuff here, so this is the lady to see who could give you all kinds of material. That you had another question, and then you had compost. I think Brian was going to address the compost.
Yeah, I was going to address that composting question. And Colin is here somewhere, I think. Oh, there you are. Okay. There is a compost demonstration site that the University of Arkansas Cooperative Extension Office has over by Drake Street, over by the fairgrounds.
Okay.
So that might have been something going along with that. I know Liz and I have had discussions about, some way that the city can get involved with doing compost bins and doing a giveaway and kind of creating that. So we haven't done it yet, so I don't know exactly what group you were referring to, but I know the Extension Office does have that, and we rely on them heavily because they've done a great job of describing how to compost it in the backyard, and we got all their literature, and when people ask us that question, we pass that information on to them. So
I mean, even if there was a workshop or something, because, I mean, you see it, it pops up on Pinterest, build your own rotating compost bin. I mean, I've got more Pinterest fails in my repertoire than I have successes, and so I don't even want to get involved with that. Even if there was just like hey, everyone that's into this class, bring, if you can donate $30 just for supplies, we will help you build this thing, and then it's educational.
Yeah.
You just taught me how to build a compost bin. It's not something I read off of Pinterest and it's going to fall over in my yard. It's gonna be a good thing.
Yeah, we're not there yet, but we've thought about it at least, and it's on the radar. It's just a matter of finding staff time to make it happen.
And I think Elizabeth could be a real good asset to you for the education and outreach information.
Okay.
You've been patiently waiting to tell us the wonders of Canada, I hope.
So you guys, I think you're going down really the right track. Single stream is going to produce more volume as a collection tool, as well as it's actually going to offer better economics in your pickup. You don't have to send 2 trucks out. You don't have to sort out sites. You're going to get more houses per truck, and they're going to be able to do more in a day. Mayor, how good of a negotiator are you? Because it really relies on you right now, doesn't it? MRFs are built on volume plays. You talked about tonnage. You guys might not have picked up on this. I'm going to just try to say it in the way that I got to understand it. If you don't have enough volume that's going to go through that facility every week, you can't afford it. Okay? But if you get more than so Fayetteville can't do it on their own, you need more municipalities to feed that facility, because it's a volume play. That's all the economics are for it, it's volume. Okay? So increasing the total amount through plus increasing the per capita quickly may get you the volume. So good luck. There are a few things that I did see in gaps. You've got great graphics, and somebody's doing a great job on communications, but you're missing on the side of the trucks in public places, high schools, things like that. Go to the How to Recycle label. They've done a great amount of work that we brought over from the UK and RAP that they've just made appropriate for the US market recently. So the How to Recycle label, it's a really great way. They've studied how to communicate with customers to get them to recycle more. And where in key places, municipalities have to put it up. You have to find the money somewhere to do it. I like to see how long it takes me to find a recycling bin walking in. It took me a little while. I had to get right outside, and I don't know whether that one was here before or it was placed here because this meeting was going to be here. Hopefully it stays there all the time. I didn't go to high school here. Excellent. Excellent.
You barked up the wrong tree.
Excellent. I'm happy about that. That is passion right there. That's what I like to see. Outstanding. Because
you might be lined up for that $10,000 salary sharing they want you to do.
You are really the number one person here, because a lot of us, we get caught in our ways, and it's hard for us to learn new things. But if you bring this and you come home and you see something that should have been in the recycling bin that is in the garbage, and you can give your mom grief on that, that's what changes behavior for multi-generations. So it really does start in the schools, and if you're going to get the volume plays and get people that are going to sort it out, the only people that really can shame us are our kids and get away with it in those scenarios. The city can't shame folks or sort out their garbage because the mayor gets calls, and those are voters. Really focusing on the education within the kids as well. You've got a lot of trucks out there that are mobile billboards. Think about using them, because you've got a lot of people in the programs that
Yeah, I was smiling when you were saying that, because that's on the radar for this year.
Outstanding.
And actually, one of the reasons we haven't done it yet is because we were waiting for some good information from our waste audits. You know, I have this vision of our residential trash trucks going down the street with, 19%, Robin? 19% of the waste that was in this truck could be recycled through our current recycling system. Recycle something today with information, just have that as a rolling bill, because we don't have billboards in Fayetteville. Yep. We do have a contract with Cox Media for commercials, Cox Media for a Recycle Something campaign, and Razorback Malco Theater. But those are commercials that don't really get into the nuts and bolts of how to recycle. Those are just informational messages to recycle. So.
And a lot of the big brands are going to be putting that how to recycle label on in the coming years onto their pack. So if you can pick it up as a municipality, it's just the coordination between your pack and what you actually see on site to get that visual going through and start to train the consumer on what goes where and how to divide things out, or at least just hit one or the other, right, as they're passing through. It takes training, and it takes time, and it takes everybody coordinated to do it. The volume play is your only way you're going to hit 80%. You need a MRF with optical sorters, which are little camera things that will shoot off any metal cans in this little field thing. So, good luck. Good luck.
We're gonna get there with everybody in this room and the staff. I think we're gonna get a major change. Before we come back, you haven't had a chance yet. So anybody who wants to say something who hasn't had a chance, if you want to go first, then we'll come back to the people who've asked.
Thanks. I had a couple questions about the mechanics of measuring the 80%. Like how much commercial is included? Is any industrial included? I wasn't sure what all went into the universe. And is 80% from a baseline of a certain year, or how's all that? Because I just wondered, mechanically how it's all going to be measured.
That's a really good question, but you should forget about it. Because the question, as I understand it, is, well, how did 80% come about? I live in a state that it's 75%, and they count waste energy towards those tons towards recycling. So the definition of recycling is very different. What we understand in asking that question in the last few days is that it was a goal. Let's set a high target. We didn't want to say zero waste, but let's set a high target. And let me tell you, they set a high target. But there's not a building block that says all of these numbers. What Robin was talking about earlier, well, we actually have it up there, is to get to 80%, it's going to take this effort of doing all of these things. I'm not big on counting from the perspective of you're asking, because it's how do you measure things. I mean, we look at a lot of state work. I would tell you, I'll pick on my home state, we have the worst data probably in the country, Florida. But we could have a few other states that could join that list. Why? Because there's different definitions of, as I mentioned before, of how somebody counts recycling. And do they count the commercial accounts, or is that not counted in that? We're hired by people to help find tonnage. I mean, I don't know how else you would describe that. Find tonnage in counties. We have a client who convinced the state that they should get credit for grass cuttings from people cutting and leaving the grass on their lawn, and they came up with a calculation. They submitted it to the state approved it, that counts towards recycling. So I'm not big on the numbers, but what I am big on is we have a denominator and a numerator here that says, here's how much is being disposed of, here's how much is being recovered. That number needs to significantly go up. So long-winded answer to this, there's no science behind that 80% that I'm aware of, and correct me if I'm wrong. Is that?
Okay, well, I guess just as a comment, like you mentioned, the mowing and not bagging it versus bagging it, is that something you count? There's a lot of examples like that. Not buying something, not wasting it in the first place, it's hard to quantify that, but there are programs out there to help businesses make different decisions. And so I didn't know if you're going to try to quantify those kind of things. If it's an effort to make an impact in those areas, then it'd be good to measure it and take credit for it. So that's why I was wondering, how you're going.
I don't think, and we haven't gotten to this point, that we're going to start counting things like pre-cycling, which is what you're referring to, or grass clippings. Let's talk about the stuff, the large quantities that are being disposed of, and turn that around. But I hear your point. And
yeah, I just wanted to add, and I think I said this earlier, we were really focusing on the materials that the city manages, and we know that there's other stuff being managed. The city has franchises with several haulers that pick up some construction and demolition debris. They pick up some recyclables, but we don't know those quantities. So it's like, for our purpose, let's focus on what the city's handling. Not that the other stuff isn't important, but we're more interested on focusing what can we divert than necessarily coming up with a methodology to how to quantify the stuff that's not easily quantified. We're more worried about bringing results about on the things that we can quantify and we do know about.
does that help on that?
I got one other.
I've got a couple. First of all, thanks for putting up with us. We are almost always passionate and very rarely brief. I have a couple of really specific questions for you. I work for the local waste district.
That could be a good political line to use.
You like that? You see how I threw that in there? Yeah. So first of all, with our population, assuming we pulled everybody in and we got 500,000, give or take, if we pulled in Fort Smith and waited a decade, then we're talking 750,000. What realistically is our price range for a single stream? You said 30 million. There's no way we bring a $30 million single MRF here. It's just not going to happen, right? So then Little Rock, theirs was about $5 or $6 million in upgrades, probably worth 8 or 9 million. What realistically are we looking at?
Yeah, the money it's a great question. The money I was talking about, the 35 million, was for a mixed waste processing plant.
Yeah.
That's a whole different animal. Your number for a single stream MRF is probably somewhere in the ball game.
Okay.
So let's look at how that part of the business works. So the material comes to a recycling center. The cities is totally different. That's not a modern MRF. They have a baling facility, they package material and send it to market. So a modern MRF, you could debate the number, a recycling facility, material recovery facility, where if you had commingled recyclables or single stream recyclables, where those materials would go. The numbers range a bit, but just for a nice ballpark number, you could assume the cost for the operator to process is $60 a ton. So you have $60 a ton in processing cost, then the issue is, well, what's that material worth? Then it has to be transported, and there's a whole bunch of other factors. So to answer your question, which is, how much would it cost? And who would do it? Well, if we get a regional facility, I think there's folks here from Waste Management, I think there's people here from Harmon, I think there's people here from other companies. They'd be really happy if somebody was to aggregate 25,000 tons of material to add to what the company already controls to build the plant. And that's what we're going to be meeting about in the next few days. So I think economically it can work. My point from before is it can't work with 5,000 tons, as the gentleman was saying. It's not going to happen.
So we're thinking an under $10 million single stream, though. We're not thinking Minnesota-style $25, $30 million.
Well, that's one of the newest MRFs in the country referring to there. Right. We're not actually thinking, we're thinking all of these things at this point. We don't know. Because if we could get a population of 500,000 people to partake, it's going to be a very different size facility than if we get 100 or 200. So we don't know the answer to that yet. but economically recycling can work and does work. And it's working all over the country. Now, some people say, well, right now it costs more to do that. But as I said before, all of this costs. It costs to pick up yard waste. It costs to pick up recyclables. It costs to pick up garbage. It costs to dispose of garbage. It costs to handle tires. All of this has a cost. It's a service business. So I don't know if I hit the answer to your question.
You did. Yeah,
Okay.
it was just a size thing.
We don't know what size we are. When we grow up, we don't know what size we are yet. We're going to find out.
That's understandable. Especially with this, when you were talking about getting to 80%, it seemed, and I might have misunderstood, but it seemed that you were assuming construction and demolition MRFs, or at least one construction and demolition MRF. That seemed to be, like, we know we're going to have to build a compost facility. We know single stream's presumably going to happen. Are you explicitly, I mean, is that something that you would say explicitly, that we need to have a C and D MRF to be able to pull off?
We think you have to have the ability to have construction and demolition material processed. My understanding is some of that is occurring. And yes, we will be recommending capacity to process construction and demolition material.
Yeah, so the point is you're not getting to 80% without looking at construction demolition debris, and there's different ways of doing it. You can try to source separate, you can do a MRF, and again, those are options we'll be looking at and working with the city to see about what's viable here.
And then one more quick question. When y'all publish your actual, year-long report, presumably you're going to give a series of possible options. Are you going to include for the public kind of the economics of some of the more cutting-edge stuff? I mean, you talked about Infinitus down in Alabama. Would y'all present that as an option so the public could see the cost differential and some of the pros and cons? And waste to energy would be my other one. That's kind of a dirty word around here. I'm assuming some of the people you work with use it. Is that, or at least a piece of paper talking about the economics of that?
We're going to look at all of those things with, I believe, the exception of waste to energy, because I don't think that is part of what the city is contemplating. My understanding is they had some past experiences with that didn't go very well, and it would not be a very popular topic in the community, or would not be a very popular topic to be reelected on. So those are, if the community doesn't like it and the politicians don't like it, we're out. So, but I'm interested that, what do you do that you know as much as the name of the operator?
I work for the Boston Mountain Solid Waste District. I'm the programs coordinator.
Well, we're meeting with you, or
You're meeting with my boss on
I'm meeting with your boss. Okay, well, we look forward to tell your boss you should be there too, because you know a lot and you could add value.
And I will say, I watched your presentation, a video of your presentation on solid waste, and appreciate it.
And where were you watching that? Wow, okay. Go right ahead.
Hi, I will be mercifully brief, hopefully, but there's a couple of things. First of all, I want to commend you and the city for doing this. This is excellent staff with excellent political leadership, and I commend everybody for talking about this. Some history. In the 1990s, the state of Arkansas created solid waste management districts. We used to be with Benton and Washington County, with incredible possible volumes in that. For all types of complex political reasons, we split. Your point that we don't have enough waste to create a decent MRF is an issue that's going to have to be looked at. I don't know if that's part of your responsibility.
Right here.
Okay, well, and that needs to be talked about, and then we need to talk through in some form or fashion how we're going to work together. You had the courage to use the word regional, and I commend you for that. Thank you for that.
Well, and this gentleman right here is going to, his boss, who we're meeting with in the next couple of days,
sure,
is a key part of that.
And maybe the two
mayor's sitting
districts
here.
will agree to
it's almost 8 o'clock at
collaborate
night,
and
and the mayor's
cooperate.
still sitting here.
Oh, 4 districts. Okay, it's even worse. 4 districts, yeah. But anyway, thank you.
Well, no, thank you. And we think, staff, I believe the elected officials think this is possible and probable to come about. And I appreciate your comments going back to the 90s, because the point is something about that made sense. I don't know what broke it up, but we're looking to see if it could come back together. Are we going to get 100% of the way there? Not sure. You found a place to recycle your tin cans. I know it.
No, actually, thank you also. I do appreciate it. And I've been mulling over some of the difficulties, and I realize you've got to get the volume up. How do you get the volume up? You educate. I know people who can walk by, and sometimes I'm guilty of this myself, walk by something and not even see it. how do you reach that percentage of the population that is resistant to it? Why should I recycle? What's in it for me? We've got all this land, as he said. We've got all this land out there. We just bury the trash. Why should I? How do you reach them? I'm thinking, I'm not sexist, but I grew up in a family of 4 brothers, and I know they're very resistant to, what's in it for me? Why should I? I can see the reason why. And I think it's incredible that others can't. You have to buy fewer trash bags. Plus, number 1, you take it to the recycle bin, you take your bag back. You know, you don't fill up the earth with all this garbage. You know, I mean, and you're utilizing resources that might grow scarce. And again, it was drilled into me as a child. Well, I'm thinking, how do you reach those people that are so resistant to it? What percentage of the recyclable materials are not being recycled?
Well, all good points. That was what was up there before. And Robert could flip that one back up and you could see all that's not being recycled. But to answer your question, education and outreach and communication are key.
Well, and I think the way to reach them is not necessarily because if you advertise on the sports channel, excuse me, if you put a scroll across there or a quick 15-second ad, because that's what they're watching. They're not watching Lifetime Channel or, you know. You've
I'm going to be 60 this year. And so based on my experience, I've kind of finally mellowed out enough to accept the 80-20 rule. So I appreciate what you're saying, but I don't care what we do, you're not reaching 20% of the people.
Yeah.
You're not going to change that. If we could get 80% of the people to partake and function, we'll be doing fantastic. The programs I mentioned before in other places that have gone to mixed waste have kind of given up, and they've said Montgomery, they didn't want to deal with it. So they said, you know what, we're just going to put it all in one can and we'll magically make it go away, which could be debated, the success of it. So it's sleep better at night, give up on some of your brothers. You can't get through their thick skulls. It's not going to happen. Some of them are in the 20% category. But the real answer to your question is education, information, communication, and that survey that Pete will be very unhappy if I don't remind you, have your brothers fill that out. Maybe they'll see, they could write in there in the comment section why they don't think it makes sense.
Yeah, I don't know where you all are in the process, and so I don't know if it's been going on for a couple of weeks or months, because I missed that, but I assume you've done a waste characterization there somewhere. And did that include the other collectors, the haulers? So a couple of questions I had were...
That's the waste composition study that was done. And there's more, it's in a draft form now, the city is reviewing it, and it's actually broken down, and Robin could talk about this, by generator type.
And there's a lot more detail than this, but, you know, we did residential, we did, I don't know, 30-some material categories.
Okay.
So there's a lot more detail than this,
Yep.
and then that's the commercial. And we sort of combined it all here. We did a visual audit of that drop box waste. We also sorted litter. And then we also did the university waste as part of it too.
Yep.
But other materials collected by other private haulers we did not include.
Mm-hmm.
It was really what was managed by the city.
I was just curious, of that 80%, or that 60% that hasn't been acquired yet, have you identified or categorized where the bulk of that weight is, more or less? Who are the generators? I don't know how you categorize that, but do you have a good idea of where the biggest chunk of that change is?
Right, so that's, I think that this is basically what this table shows you. So it shows what's already being recycled and then the other 80% that's not being diverted now. And you can see where the biggest pieces of pies are. So, you know, the blue checkerboard and stripe, that's recyclable containers and paper. That's not being recycled. The commercial is the striped part, which is 13%, I think. I'm looking at it sideways. And then the checkerboard blue is from residential. So we broke it down by residential and commercial. not by specific businesses themselves.
Okay, and then how about a category such as C and D? Where does that fit in?
So that's the drop box waste at the bottom.
Uh-huh.
We did a visual audit, and that's in the report, and we did break that down into different components there. We just didn't put that level of detail here.
In a couple of weeks, you'll be able to see once we get the final comments from the city, I think they're going to post it on their website, and you'll be able to see it in detail. And between them and us, we'll answer any questions you want. You'll have a lot of questions, see all the different
Sure,
breakdowns.
yeah. Is there anything that's hit you in the face so far that looks like low-hanging fruit?
Well, to me, the lowest hanging fruit is that 19% there in the blue, because it's part of your existing program. The other stuff would require...
You're adding the 6 and the 13,
Yeah.
right? For those who are math challenged like myself.
Oh, sorry. You know, the rest of it would require programmatic changes. That's the stuff that you can go after under your existing program, especially the residential. The commercial, definitely more difficult. And by the way, multifamily in this is included in commercial because most of the multifamily have what we call commercial type collection. So that's actually included in the commercial, and that's the toughest part.
Let's go back to your point on the 19%, the 6 and the 3 on the far side of that. So that means that your recycling rate's about 20%. There's 19% of the very materials that are part of the program aren't being collected. That's a big opportunity. Right. You could double just by getting, right.
Thank you.
Well, it's 8 o'clock. You guys have been troopers and are committed to the city. I'll tell you, we walked around downtown at the square today, and you know, I travel a lot, and that's one of the prettiest little downtown areas. Don't tell people. You don't want people to know about it. The tulips, if you haven't been down there, you should go see the flowers that are there and how beautiful that area looks. And there are twin recycling. There are twin containers on many of those corners. So congratulations on that. Robin and I will stay. I know staff will stay. We thank you for being here. We look forward to working to make your city exactly what you want it to be. So thank you.